2024 has come to an end, and it was an incredibly busy year. Time to reflect extensively on what happened and also look ahead to what's on the agenda for this year. Below, you'll find a lengthy account of the past year, but I can already reveal that I have plenty to be satisfied with. January to April. The winter was all about coaching and ensuring an income for the rest of the year. I had made a deal with myself not to step into a boat for an extended period plus or minus 4 months, as I had been continuously active in a boat since 2017. During this time, I worked with many different teams. This included the 29er national training team, under 18 years, primarily during their winter training camps in Barcelona. I also started assisting the Dutch FX talent team and spent a significant period working with a Canadian 49er team, supporting them through their Olympic qualification in Palma. There were 3 Canadian 49er teams competing for their ticket to Paris during the World Championship in March and the Palma event in April. The team I supported was the youngest and less experienced compared to the other team, which ultimately secured the Olympic spot. It was incredibly insightful to work with these young sailors under such pressure, and I feel I contributed to their progress, helping them make significant strides in Palma, keeping the competition exciting until the very end. This was an extremely busy period. I was often abroad, and back in the Netherlands I supported other Dutch teams during weekends. By March, I had secretly stepped back into the boat myself, as my self-imposed 4-month hiatus had ended. I had already made plans for the rest of the season. During this time, I sailed a lot in the solo class, and also acquired a contender from Germany because the class has an attractive calendar for the coming years. In addition to all this, I physically challenged myself with a 75-day challenge. Not quite the way it's sometimes marketed online, but for me, it meant doing some form of exercise every day for 75 consecutive days. I made it to day 67. The reasons why I didn't succeed that day don't really matter. I didn't finish. It requires careful planning, especially in such a hectic period, to make time for exercise. What struck me was how much energy I got in return. Despite focusing on coaching, I took 1 weekend off to compete in the Dutch Sprint Championship solo. One reason I was keen to participate was that I had set my sights on excelling in the solo class. I wanted to win all the major events in this class this year: Onk Sprint, Spring Cup Medemblik, Nationals and Nation Cup GBR, and Onk. The Dutch Sprint Championship was held at WV Randmeer, and with the training and lessons I had absorbed that spring, I was in a strong position and managed to win the event. Transition period, May. At the end of April, I suddenly hurt my back. I had stepped awkwardly out of the coach rib, first noticing some discomfort in my knee, and 2 days later, my back seized up while the knee pain disappeared. This left me out of action for about a week, which was unfortunate because it was during the May holiday when I had planned to run a great camp with the 29er team. Thankfully, I recovered just in time to participate in the Spring Cup in Medemblik in the solo class. This event, with strong winds, had multiple objectives for me. Firstly, I had wanted to compete in this event ever since I saw the Spring Cup from my laser back in 2017. It was one of the reasons I decided to try the solo class. Secondly, it was a rare opportunity to sail on large open water, which we don't do often in this class. Finally, it was an excellent chance to prepare for the ONK and Nation Cup, both of which would also take place on open water later in the year. During the Spring Cup, I experimented extensively with mast positions and material choices. The solo class allows sails and masts from various manufacturers, offering strategic flexibility. I decided to keep my current hull, as upgrading to a new one wasn't feasible financially, but I acquired a reasonably priced second-hand mast and tested new sails from North Sails. The event went well and provided valuable insights, especially regarding equipment combinations and adjustments. In addition to the solo event, I also planned to compete in the French Championship in the contender class, held in Dielet, Normandy. This event included a free training session the day before, which was crucial for me. It was my first time sailing against other contenders, and I needed to test a new sail from North Sails. Petra, my girlfriend, and I drove to France the afternoon before, arriving late at night. Despite the darkness and unfamiliar surroundings, the other contenders were already there, and we could hear the sea. The next morning, I rigged the boat immediately, as the low tide meant we couldn't wait too long to start training. The training day was fantastic. I finally had other boats nearby to gauge whether I was on the right track with my tuning, speed, and maneuvers. The event spanned 3 days, with the first 2 characterized by very light winds. During one race, I misjudged the tide and ended up on the wrong side of a buoy, preventing me from completing the course correctly despite having a significant lead. As a result, I withdrew from that race, which meant I could no longer discard any future poor results. The remaining light wind races went well, and I was satisfied with both the boat's speed and my decision-making. Starting, which I had been slightly worried about beforehand, turned out not to be an issue. This would later become an important aspect in this class. The final day brought much stronger winds, and it was physically demanding. Upwind, I performed well, but downwind left room for improvement. I felt the boat could plane, but the technique others were using didn't feel right for me. In the final race, I had the chance to break away with the second-place competitor, allowing me to experiment more with my downwind technique. This risk paid off, and I significantly distanced myself from the rest of the fleet, a crucial moment for me. It confirmed that I should trust my instincts more regarding downwind sailing. It's worth noting that the contender class uses a pumping flag, allowing sailors to pump and roll the boat downwind for extra speed. This technique is similar to what's permitted in the Finn class and the 470. Later in the season, I adapted several techniques from the 470 for use in this boat. Alongside the long days on the water, I spent considerable time working on the boat itself, particularly mast tuning. Since we parked the van close to the ramp, it was easy to make adjustments. Petra's support was invaluable. She not only looked after me, but also practiced driving the van and trailer, taking over large parts of the journey. Until mid-June, I continued coaching extensively, primarily in the Netherlands during weekends, but also in Spain, where I assisted a Belgian 49er team in their final preparations for the Paris Olympics. I also traveled to Lake Garda with two 29er teams representing the Netherlands at the Youth World Championships later that summer. We used a national event open to foreign teams as preparation for the Worlds. On weekends in the Netherlands, I brought my contender along to coaching days. As the days grew longer, I could sail the boat in the evenings until sunset, honing my skills, particularly tacking and gibing. After this period, I was ready to focus entirely on my own sailing, with enough work completed to fund the upcoming months of competition. I have an old Renault Master L2H2 from 2003, which this year passed the 300,000-kilometer mark. It's been converted into a camper. The front has space for 3 people, and inside I've added bunk beds and a small kitchenette. At the back of the van, there's plenty of space for tools, spare equipment, and a place to dry my sailing gear. Under the bed, there's ample room for all my sails. Additionally, I can bring along a bike, which fits inside the van without needing to take it apart. I'm often on the road alone, so I use the top bunk as extra storage and can rotate the front bench to create a seating area inside. I bought the van during the COVID period for a ridiculously low price, and the fact that it still manages to transport me and all my boats everywhere is just amazing. It's truly the best purchase I've ever made, saving me a ton of money on accommodations I'd otherwise have to book. The alternative would be camping, but I don't usually sleep well in a tent. The beds in the van have full-size 80-centimeter wide mattresses, so it's just like sleeping at home, which was a top priority for me. Another advantage is that there's no need to pack or tidy up. Just bring the solar panel inside, lock the cabinets, and off you go. This year, I often brought all my food supplies for longer trips from the Netherlands, meaning I rarely had to visit a supermarket. This saved a lot of time during events, allowing me to avoid distractions and focus entirely on the competition. Summer Sailing, Part 1. After returning from Spain, where I spent the last week coaching, I almost immediately drove to Aqua Vitesse. They had an RS Aero available for me to borrow. I quickly picked it up, rigged it in Hellevoets Luis, and spent 3 consecutive days on the water with a laser sailor from the club, getting the hang of the boat. Looking back, sailing with Rory was incredibly valuable. You quickly see the differences between the boats, and once you understand those differences, you can adjust your technique accordingly. And the next morning, I set off early for France, where the European Championship was to take place in Carnac. I had planned to leave early so I could rig the boat and perhaps sail a quick 30-minute lap in the evening to check everything. The drive went smoothly, though this time I traveled alone. When I arrived, the boat was dirty from the trip, so I flipped it over and cleaned it, something I had promised myself to do for every boat I use in title events. Unfortunately, I discovered a small hole in the hull, likely caused by a rock, as the practice days had been completely dry. I spent the afternoon repairing the hole, and while I managed to fix it perfectly, I didn't have time to test the boat. Day 1. High winds and mishaps. The first day was marked by strong winds around 6 Beaufort. I got on the water early as I hadn't tested the boat the previous day, a rule I set for myself when I'm unfamiliar with a boat. On my way to the start line, I tightened the Cunningham and, bam, the sail came down. Initially, I thought the main halyard had come loose, but it turned out the halyard was intact. The attachment at the masthead had broken. Fortunately, the rescue team arrived quickly and offered to tie me to another boat to warm up, but I opted to head back to shore instead. Back on land, I borrowed a mast top from another Dutch sailor and quickly rigged the boat again. With 30 knots of wind, I raced back to the start line just in time. However, during the first upwind leg, the mainsail came down again, this time due to a broken halyard. I decided to tie the halyard at the mast's top and continue, but as I was working in the water, the mast separated. I ended up with the mast top in one hand and the boat drifting away. My water polo background helped as I swam after the boat, eventually using the mast to climb back aboard. With the rescue team's help, I got the mast back up and managed to sail the second race. Despite good speed, I made a beginner's mistake. Seaweed on the daggerboard. The first day wasn't great, but I took solace in my boat speed. Progress through challenges. The following days brought different conditions. In strong winds, I managed to win 4 races by taking risks and making good tactical decisions. On the light wind day, I struggled, especially in a duel with 2 competitors. In the final race, I narrowly finished ahead of them by a single boat length, which turned out to be crucial as the last day saw no wind, and I won the European Championship on equal points. After the prize ceremony, I drove back to the Netherlands, returned the boat in the middle of the night, and arrived home around 2 a.m. The next morning, I was already preparing for the next event, loading up groceries and heading to Hellevoetsluis to pick up my contender for the Kieler Woche in Germany. Kieler Woche, Lessons Learned. The Kieler Woche was a challenging event with strong international competition. Although I made many mistakes and capsized too often, I learned a lot about downwind technique and patience in lighter winds. By the end, I placed 5th, pleased with my progress in both boat handling and preparation. I also created a checklist to summarize class rules, notices of race, and sailing instructions for future events, saving time on site. Star Class, Eastern Hemisphere Championship. After Kiel, I joined my star crew, Robin Jacobs, in Eckernford for the Eastern Hemisphere Championship. Despite our efforts, we struggled with boat handling and limited practice time. The steep learning curve became evident when we lost a leading position in the final race due to errors. We finished 14th overall, a clear reminder that we need more time in the boat to compete at this level. Warnemünde Week, German Contender Championship. I then traveled to Warnemünde for the German Contender Championship. After making several adjustments to the boat, I was ready for the event. The first day was cancelled due to no wind, but the following days brought varying conditions. Despite a strong start, I couldn't overcome the Danish sailors' height advantage upwind. However, I secured a 2nd place overall, showing significant progress in starting, boat handling, and downwind speed compared to earlier events. The summer was a whirlwind of events, each filled with challenges and valuable lessons. These experiences have set the stage for the upcoming major competitions, where I hope to continue improving and achieving my goals. Summer Sailing, Part 2. After an intense first part of the summer, I had some decisions to make, not about which events to attend, as those were already fixed, but about how to prepare for them. I realized that to compete for titles, I needed to dedicate more time to the boats. In both the Contender and Star classes, I simply hadn't trained enough to challenge the top sailors. Even in the RS Aero, I barely managed to win due to insufficient preparation. I didn't want to experience that again, so I had to choose where to focus. With limited time for training, I concluded that my summer focus would be on the RS 500 and solo classes, shifting in the fall to the Dutch Championships after the Contender Europeans. At the same time, I began working at carbon masts in Hellevoetsluis, which left even less time for sailing. Since the RS 500 event was first on the agenda, I decided to focus on physical training. To perform well in the RS 500, I needed to lose weight, while the solo class required strong fitness for hiking. My training included cycling, hiking drills, and a strict diet to shed kilos. Over 2.5 weeks, I lost 5 kilos, most of which was water weight rather than fat. Training for the RS 500 Worlds. The week before the World Championships in Bruinis, we trained with Team Zealand out of Herkingen. I sailed the RS 500 with my sister Lisa, who doesn't sail often, so we made time to practice. In the 2 months leading up to the event, we planned 4 sessions, but poor weather limited us to 2. The Herkingen training days were mostly light wind sessions, which suited us as that's our weak point. In winds above 11 knots, we've always felt fast in the RS 500. We focused on boat handling in stronger winds and speed work alongside other boats in lighter winds. Practicing starts with the other teams helped refine our onboard communication, ensuring Lisa understood my intentions with the boat. In between, I managed a few solo sessions to stay sharp. However, I was dealing with a minor injury. a broken finger caused by a misjudged hammer strike at home. I didn't realize it was broken until a week later, and I trained with a splint. Thankfully, the finger healed quickly, and I hardly noticed it during the event. RS 500 World Championships. The RS 500 Worlds spanned 5 days, starting with 2 days of qualification races, all held in very light winds that required intense focus. We performed well under these conditions and achieved good results, but a British team in another group consistently outperformed us. Despite strong sailing, we remained in second place. The final 3 days were fleet races with the top-ranked boats. As expected, the fleet was tighter, and small differences had significant impacts. The first finals day continued with light winds, where we secured 2 third-place finishes, with the British team just ahead of us in both races. Thankfully, we won the last race while they placed 6th, their first slip-up. The second finals day brought extremely variable conditions due to competing thermal winds, causing massive shifts. The race committee struggled to set fair courses, and after several delays, only 1 race was completed, which was abandoned halfway due to shifting winds. At the end of the day, a protest was filed against the British team. Although it would only count as a discard for them, it worked in our favor. The final day was a game-changer with winds ranging from 20 to 28 knots. We started the day tied on points with the British team, with no threat from the third-place team. Our focus was solely on the British. In the first race, we managed a great match race, forcing them back and gaining a significant lead by the first mark. However, in the heavy downwind leg, chaos ensued as multiple boats capsized. The British managed to catch up, but we finished just ahead of them in third place, with them in fourth. The plan for the final race was the same, and we executed it well up to the first mark. However, the British quickly gained ground on the downwind leg. After losing sight of them, we secured a second-place finish. Later, we learned their crew had been injured, keeping them from challenging further. This secured us the title of World Champions for the 3rd time, a proud moment shared with my sister Lisa. Our preparation, using well-maintained gear and strategic training with other Dutch teams, clearly paid off. Post-Worlds, Solo and Contender Events. The day after the RS 500 Worlds, I participated in a solo event at WV Ranmere, a practice event 3 months before the solo season's main events. It was a delightful weekend with challenging competitors, exactly what I needed. The following week, I competed in the Benelux Championships in Schaarendijke with my contender. The primary reason was to test a new mast developed with carbon masts, which was ready just in time for the European Championship. The new rig offered better tuning options, and I was pleased with its performance. Solo Nationals in England. 2 days after Schaarendijke, I boarded a ferry to England for the Solo Nationals and Nations Cup in Brightling Sea. Traveling with Menno Huisman in his camper, we arrived early, rigged the boats, and headed out to practice on the sea. The conditions featured heavy chop, requiring precise upwind technique and control to maintain speed downwind. The first day of the event was cancelled due to high winds, which threatened to blow away our tents. The second day was a disappointment, with a decent second place in the first race, followed by 12th and 13th places due to basic mistakes. On the third day, I began with a poor start, misjudging the signals, but recovered with a 7th place finish. As the wind increased, conditions became ideal for my setup, and I won the final 2 races of the day, bringing me back into contention. The final day brought more wind with intense battles against the leading British sailors. In the last race, I focused on defending against Davenport, my primary rival. Despite a close finish, I managed to edge him out, winning the event on equal points, becoming the first Dutch sailor to win the Solo Nationals since 1990. Swiss Championships in Silvaplana. The following morning, I headed to Silvaplana, Switzerland for another event. The high-altitude lake brought unique challenges, with unstable winds near the harbor. Over several days, I achieved mixed results, including a few strong finishes and a disappointing 21st place in the final race, which dropped me to 6th overall. The new mast proved promising, but it was clear I needed more time and targeted training to refine my performance further. This summer, marked by focused effort and critical decisions, culminated in rewarding results and valuable lessons for the future. Before the summer vacation, the sailing clubs in Hellevoetsluis organized Tuesday evening races for keelboats. This year, they opened it up to dinghies, allowing us to compete under the SW handicap system. I was able to borrow an old laser from Rory, another member of WVH. This allowed a small group of us with lasers to race together. Occasionally, a Finn and a Yngling also joined the competition. Hopefully, we can participate again next year and attract even more sailors. My own laser was at the RZV in Rotterdam, where I occasionally took part in their Wednesday evening races. Sailing at Kralingen is always a great way to sharpen your racing skills. Lots of wind shifts and constant challenges, ensuring you stay alert throughout the race. Autumn 2024. A week after the European Championships in Switzerland, the autumn season began. For me, it was important to mentally separate this new period from the summer. Otherwise, it feels like 10 weeks straight of racing and trying to perform, which can be overwhelming. Mentally scheduling some rest was essential. Spanker Dutch Championship. The first weekend featured the Dutch Championship in the Spanker class, held at the Amstelmeer in the north. It's a beautiful location with a large lake where we could park our campers close to the club. We borrowed the Spanker, and my crew was Wouter Stiffout, with whom I previously won the European Championship in the javelin. The same Spanker we used last year for this championship clearly needed new sails, and Molinar provided us with a brand new set, mainsail, and jib, just in time. The day before the event, we headed to the Amstelmeer to test the sails and review boat handling, which was especially important for Wouter since he had never sailed this boat before. Everything worked well, and we spent some time fine-tuning the boat and cleaning the hull. The first day brought beautiful conditions, and the race committee decided on 4 races. A great choice. We scored 5-1-1-3. After the races, I was unexpectedly summoned by the protest committee. They explained the situation, but I was baffled as it didn't seem to involve us. Thankfully, the jury found the complaint too vague, and the protest was dismissed. The second day began in surreal conditions. 5-7 knots of wind, but the water was like glass, making it impossible to see where the wind was. Racing under such conditions was challenging and exciting. We sailed 2 races in this environment before the wind picked up, making the remaining races easier to navigate. We scored 1-8-8-1. On the final day, with 2 races left, we focused on keeping one competitor in check. Sailing conservatively but strategically, we secured 2 second-place finishes, clinching the title. The Spanker is genuinely fun to sail, especially with its options downwind using the spinnaker. I'm curious when I'll get to sail this class again. RS 500 Dutch Championship. The following weekend, I competed in the RS 500 Dutch Championship at the Brassemermeer. Unfortunately, my sister and regular crew, Lisa, was ill, so I had to find a replacement. After much searching, Olaf Ganzevles agreed to step in. We practiced on Friday to familiarize him with the boat and my expectations. While the practice session had good wind, the weekend races were in much lighter conditions. The event went smoothly, with favorable starting positions and little resistance from the fleet. This allowed us to dictate our own course and win every race, claiming the title. Solo Dutch Championship. The third weekend of September took me to Muiden with the Solo. I had trained during the evenings to ensure the boat was in perfect condition. This event was a key goal for the year, and I aimed to complete the picture by winning the Dutch Championship. I arrived Thursday evening, set up the boat partially, and prepared for Friday. The first race day offered excellent conditions, 12 knots of wind with significant chop, perfect for upwind work. I won all 3 races. The second day brought lighter winds, making it difficult to navigate the large waves. Saskia, a light wind specialist, excelled, and I placed second in the first race. Adjusting my strategy for the second race, I managed to pressure her into making mistakes, allowing me to secure another win. The final day had even less wind, but the race committee managed to get a couple of races in. Knowing I couldn't keep up with Saskia in these conditions, I focused on defending my position in the overall standings. With a 2nd and 4th place, I secured the title, completing my solo season goals and bringing immense satisfaction. OK Dinghy German Championship. After the solo season, I borrowed an OK dinghy from Sybren Hornstra to compete in the German Championship at Zwischenaner Meer. It was a unique venue with a narrow road through tall trees leading to a charming lake. I tested the boat with a quantum sail but struggled with its flat cut and switched to an older HD sail, which proved more suitable for the mast. The first race day had too much wind, giving me time to adjust the rigging. With Stefan de Vries's help, we reconfigured the mast rake and tension, improving the setup. Racing began on the second day with strong winds. I started well, securing a 2nd place, but struggled with speed and technique in the next races, finishing 6th and 7th in a fleet of 76 boats. The final days saw less wind. I performed well in the first race, placing 5th, but made poor strategic decisions in the second race, resulting in a discardable 30th place. The last race went well until the wind dropped completely, causing me to lose several positions. I finished 10th in that race, securing a 3rd place overall. Considering my limited experience with the OK dinghy, I was satisfied with the result. The event was well organized and the camaraderie with the other Dutch sailors made it enjoyable. Thanks to Cybrin for the opportunity. Primus Inter Paris, PIP. The season concluded with the PIP at Loosdrecht, a unique event where sailors compete in borrowed 16-meter boats. I placed 7-3-5 on the first day but struggled on the second day, finishing 13th and 8th in the final races, landing 6th overall. The PIP is not my favorite event. The 16 MPTU is a challenging boat, and the format doesn't allow time to familiarize yourself with the boat or the crew. This lack of routine makes it difficult to gather the information needed to make good decisions. Additionally, by the end of the season, fatigue sets in, making it harder to compete at your best. Still, it's something to work on if I want to participate more regularly in this event. Final months. With the season over, I shifted focus. On weekends, I began assisting the national training team FX, working with a new wave of 49er FX sailors. During the week, I was back at carbon masts. However, I quickly resumed physical training as I planned to sail the 49er again at the end of October. We spent a month training out of Bruinice and, in December, joined the talent team for 3 weeks of training in Vila Moura, Portugal. It was a productive period to refine skills, enjoy the water, and prepare for upcoming challenges. 2024 and 2025, a year of challenges and achievements. Looking back, 2024 was an incredibly rewarding and busy year. I had the pleasure of working with so many great people, whether in coaching, at carbon masts, or during the sailing events themselves. This collaboration made everything more enjoyable and gave me a lot of energy. In terms of sailing, I stood on the podium 10 times at major events, winning 8 titles across different classes. I also learned a great deal about technical aspects of sailing. It's fascinating to see how techniques and race skills can transfer from one class to another. One takeaway from the Contender and OK Dinghy classes was the international nature of their competition. The broader top-level field adds more challenge and fun, which is something I'll consider when planning my future calendar. Challenges and preparations. The primary challenge this year was staying prepared across multiple classes. I kept detailed records for each boat to stay organized and avoid confusion. I also had to make strategic decisions about when to practice, physically prepare, or work on the boats. Sailing involves many aspects, and everything needs to align for success. Equipment failure can end an event, and while I was fortunate with the RS Arrow, it underscored the importance of preparedness. I ensured all boats were in top condition, with spare parts and tools always on hand. Recovery after each event was also crucial. Sometimes I was competing for weeks on end, and maintaining energy was key. Simple habits like staying protected from the sun, eating and drinking enough on the water, and taking time to rest after racing helped significantly. Areas for improvement. If there's one thing I'd change, it would be my training schedule. I wish I had spent more time in the Contender and Star classes. However, this was limited by my crew's availability and other commitments. In hindsight, I could have shifted some of my solo training time to focus more on the Contender. That said, balancing training and work to fund everything remains a significant challenge. Sailing is not a cheap sport. Looking ahead. Currently, I'm quietly training in the Olympic 49er class, so we'll see where that leads. I also want to focus more on international classes like the Contender, OK Dinghy, and Star. At the same time, I'm developing an interest in other areas such as offshore sailing, match racing, foiling, and larger boats. The key will be managing my time effectively, but I'm not ready to stop competing just yet. Coaching is incredibly fulfilling, but as long as I enjoy racing and feel capable, I'll continue. 2024 results. ONK Sprint Solo, Geluvi Randmeer. First, Spring Cup Solo, Medemblik. First, French Championship Contender, Dielet. First, European Championship RS Aero, Karnak. First, Kieler Woche Contender, Kiel, GR. 5th, IHC Star, Eckernförde, GR. 14th, German Championship Contender, Warnemünde, GER. 2nd, Randmeer Race Solo, first in Benelux Championship Contender, Scharendijke, first in Nationals and Nations Cup Solo, Breitling Sea, GBR. First is European Championship Contender, Silva Plana, SUI, 6th. Dutch Championship Spanker, Amstelmeer, 1st. Dutch Championship RS 500, Brasem, 1st in Dutch Championship Solo, Meiden, 1st in German Championship OK Dinghy, Bad Zwischenahn, 3rd. Primus Inter Paris, Loosdrecht, 6th. 2024 was a year filled with unforgettable moments and hard-earned successes. I'm looking forward